Gaius Julius Caesar was born on July 12, 100 BCE in the Subura district of Rome, a densely populated neighborhood known for its mix of aristocratic residences and poorer dwellings. His family, the gens Julia, traced its mythical ancestry back to Iulus, the son of Aeneas, and thus to the goddess Venus herself. While this claim was legendary rather than historical, in the competitive political culture of late Republican Rome such genealogical traditions carried considerable symbolic weight, granting an aura of divine legitimacy. Inscriptions and coinage of later generations would frequently emphasize this divine connection as a means of political propaganda. Caesar's father, Gaius Julius Caesar the Elder, served as a praetor and held provincial governorships. His mother, Aurelia Cotta, came from a distinguished family with strong ties to the senatorial elite. Through Aurelia, young Caesar was connected to influential political networks that would later prove crucial in his rise. Ancient authors such as Suetonius, Divus Julius, 1-2, remark on Aurelia's discipline and traditional Roman values, which influenced her son's education and early character. The political landscape of Rome during Caesar's youth was turbulent. The reforms of the Gracchi brothers, 133 to 121 BCE, had unleashed a century of social tensions, culminating in violent struggles between the populace, who sought to use the popular assemblies to push through reforms, and the optimates, the conservative faction of the Senate. By the time of Caesar's birth, Rome had endured the bloody civil wars of Gaius Marius and Lucius Cornelius Sulla, whose rivalry defined the late 2nd and early 1st centuries BCE. In 84 BCE, at around 16 years of age, Caesar was appointed Flamen Diales, the high priest of Jupiter. This prestigious but restrictive office forbade the holder from many activities, including leading an army or even spending a single night away from Rome. His appointment was backed by his uncle by marriage, Gaius Marius, the famous general and leader of the populace. However, when Marius died and Sulla seized power in 82 BCE, Caesar's position became dangerous. As the nephew of Marius's wife Julia and husband to Cornelia, the daughter of Cinna, another Marian supporter, Caesar was directly associated with the defeated faction. Sulla ordered him to divorce Cornelia. Caesar refused, a remarkable act of defiance for a youth barely out of adolescence. According to Plutarch, Caesar, 1-2, influential friends interceded for him, and Sulla reluctantly relented, allegedly remarking, "In this young man there are many Mariuses." Archaeological evidence from the period, including inscriptions in Ostia and Rome, highlight how priesthoods and marriages were deeply political tools, confirming that Caesar's early career was intertwined with factional struggles. Deprived of his priesthood and threatened by Sulla's regime, Caesar left Rome and joined the army in Asia Minor, where he distinguished himself in campaigns against pirates and local kings. Plutarch records that Caesar won the civic crown, Corona Civica, for saving the life of a fellow soldier during the siege of Mytilene, 81 BCE. This decoration, made of oak leaves, was one of the highest honors a Roman citizen could receive and could be awarded only by testimony of the rescued comrade. Archaeological examples of the Corona Civica found in later burials emphasize its importance as a lifelong symbol of valor. After Sulla's death in 78 BCE, Caesar returned to Rome. He began a career as an orator and advocate, prosecuting former governors for corruption. Cicero, a contemporary and himself Rome's greatest orator, remarked on Caesar's eloquence, though he noted a certain excess of theatricality. The rhetorical style Caesar employed was influenced by Greek teachers such as Apollonius Molon of Rhodes, under whom he later studied. Surviving fragments of Caesar's early speeches, though scant, were praised for their clarity of expression and sharpness of argument. In 75 BCE, while traveling to Rhodes to continue his studies, Caesar was captured by Cilician pirates in the Aegean Sea. According to Plutarch, Caesar, 2:3-4, and Suetonius, Divus Julius, 4, the pirates demanded a ransom of 20 talents of silver. Caesar laughed and insisted they demand 50. During his captivity he reportedly composed poems and speeches, recited them to the pirates, and threatened that he would return to crucify them, a threat he later fulfilled after raising a fleet in Miletus. Archaeological finds of pirate strongholds in Cilicia, including fortified coastal caves, correspond with the accounts of Roman campaigns against piracy in this era, adding credibility to these anecdotes. By the early 70s BCE, Caesar had established himself as a figure of ambition and resilience. His connections to the Marian faction, his military achievements, and his bold personality positioned him for advancement at a time when the Republic's political structures were under immense strain. The rise of Pompey and Crassus, the lingering aftershocks of Sulla's dictatorship, and the ongoing crisis of provincial mismanagement all created an environment in which a determined young noble could ascend rapidly. Caesar would prove to be such a man. By 73 BCE, Caesar had secured election as military tribune, his first official step on the cursus honorum, the sequence of magistracies that structured the careers of Roman politicians. The position gave him military authority but also required him to act as a mediator between soldiers and their commanders. Ancient sources such as Sallust, Histories, Fragmentary, indicate that tribunes often became prominent through advocacy on behalf of soldiers, and Caesar's tenure enhanced his reputation for accessibility and leadership. Around 69 BCE, Caesar was elected quaestor, which entitled him to a seat in the Senate. This period was marked by both personal and political milestones. His wife Cornelia died, and at her funeral, Caesar delivered a public oration in her honor. According to Suetonius, Divus Julius, 5, this was notable because it was uncommon for young men to deliver eulogies for women, and Caesar's choice reflected both personal affection and political calculation. The oration highlighted his connection to Cinna, a Marian leader, reinforcing his populist credentials. In the same year, Caesar traveled to Hispania Ulterior as quaestor, serving under a governor whose administration has left few traces in the sources. Inscriptions from Hispania show the prominence of quaestors in financial administration, and Caesar's role there would have given him valuable experience in managing provincial revenues. Archaeological evidence from Corduba, modern Cordoba, and Hispalis, modern Seville, demonstrates the integration of Roman administration into local urban centers, contexts within which Caesar learned the complexities of provincial governance. Upon returning to Rome, Caesar married Pompeia, granddaughter of Sulla and a member of the powerful family of the Cornelii. This alliance signaled a temporary accommodation with the conservative Optimates faction. However, Caesar's sympathies remained aligned with the populace. His election as aedile in 65 BCE confirmed his political trajectory. As aedile, Caesar staged lavish games and public spectacles, expending enormous sums of borrowed money. Suetonius records that Caesar adorned the Forum with images of his supposed ancestor Aeneas and the goddess Venus, a bold act of self-promotion that simultaneously underscored his legendary lineage and challenged senatorial norms of modesty. Caesar's political debts were immense. By the mid-60s BCE, his borrowings exceeded the vast fortunes of most Roman aristocrats. His creditors included Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome, whose support would prove decisive. Archaeological records from the Forum and Circus Maximus confirm that the scale of Caesar's games required immense financial resources, from gladiatorial equipment to exotic animals. The financing of such spectacles reveals the central role of private aristocratic wealth in sustaining Roman political life. In 63 BCE, Caesar achieved the office of Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of the Roman state religion. The election was highly contested, with Caesar defeating two older and more distinguished candidates, including Quintus Catulus, a respected statesman. Ancient commentators such as Cicero, Letters to Atticus, 1:14, remark on the unexpected nature of Caesar's victory, which many attributed to heavy bribery and popular support. The office granted Caesar lifelong prestige and control over religious administration, including oversight of the Vestal Virgins, temples, and sacred law. Excavations of the Regia, the headquarters of the Pontifex Maximus on the Via Sacra, have revealed the scale of the religious bureaucracy that Caesar now commanded. During this same year, Rome was shaken by the conspiracy of Lucius Sergius Catilina, Catiline. While Cicero, then consul, famously denounced Catiline in his Catilinarian orations, Caesar's role was more ambiguous. Some senators suspected him of sympathies with the conspirators due to his populist connections. However, Caesar advocated for a more lenient punishment for the conspirators, opposing the immediate executions proposed by Cato the Younger. Sallust's Bellum Catilini preserves accounts of this debate, highlighting the ideological divides within the Senate. Caesar's stance may have been motivated more by principle, defending the right to trial, than by genuine support for Catiline, but it underscored his alignment with popular causes. In 62 BCE, Caesar was elected praetor, an office that conferred judicial authority. His tenure, however, was overshadowed by scandal. That same year, the festival of the Bona Dei, a women-only religious rite held in the house of the Pontifex Maximus, was disrupted by Publius Clodius Pulcher, who entered the ceremony disguised as a woman. The scandal implicated Caesar indirectly, as the festival was hosted in his home. Although Caesar divorced his wife Pompeia with the phrase "Caesar's wife must be above suspicion," Plutarch, Caesar, 10, his political career survived the incident. The episode illustrates the volatile mixture of religion, politics, and personal reputation in late Republican Rome. Following his praetorship, Caesar was assigned as governor to Hispania Ulterior in 61 BCE. This post proved decisive for his career. Burdened with debts, Caesar used the governorship to accumulate wealth through military campaigns against local tribes such as the Lusitanians and Chalciai. Plutarch describes how Caesar, upon seeing a statue of Alexander the Great in Cadiz, lamented that by the same age Alexander had conquered the world while he himself had achieved little. Archaeological surveys in Andalusia have uncovered fortifications and settlement layers corresponding to Roman campaigns of this era, corroborating the accounts of Caesar's military activity. The spoils of these campaigns allowed Caesar to pay down part of his debts and return to Rome in triumph. In 60 BCE, Caesar entered into the political alliance later known as the First Triumvirate, with Pompey the Great and Crassus. This informal pact united three of Rome's most powerful men: Pompey, the celebrated general; Crassus, the wealthy financier; and Caesar, the rising populist politician. Ancient sources differ on the origins of the agreement, but all concur that it was designed to bypass the conservative Senate and secure each man's objectives. The alliance was not an official institution but rather a private arrangement, yet it reshaped Roman politics for the next decade. Coins and inscriptions from this period reflect the prominence of these three figures, though the Senate resisted formal recognition of their pact. By the close of the 60s BCE, Caesar had positioned himself at the center of Roman politics. He was both burdened by enormous debts and empowered by unmatched popular support. His religious authority as Pontifex Maximus, his military success in Hispania, and his strategic alliance with Pompey and Crassus gave him the resources and backing necessary for the consulship. In 59 BCE, Caesar would achieve this highest of republican magistracies, setting the stage for the transformative events of the Gallic Wars and the eventual collapse of the Roman Republic. In 59 BCE, Gaius Julius Caesar secured election to the consulship alongside Marcus Calpurnius Bibulus. His consulship was marked by political conflict with the Senate and the conservative faction, but through the support of Pompey and Crassus, Caesar pushed through key legislation, including agrarian laws to provide land for Pompey's veterans. At the conclusion of his consulship, Caesar obtained through the Lex Vatinia, sponsored by the tribune Publius Vatinius, an extraordinary proconsular command, 5 years over Cisalpine Gaul and Illyricum, later extended to include Transalpine Gaul. This command provided both military forces and proximity to the political center of Rome. Inscriptions from the period confirm the legal framework of this command, which was unprecedented in scope. The Gallic Wars began in 58 BCE, when the Helvetia, a Celtic tribe from modern Switzerland, attempted a mass migration into Gaul. Caesar intercepted them near Bibracte, defeating them decisively. His own account in Commentarii de Bello Gallico, Book I, provides detailed figures, claiming that 368,000 Helvetiae had set out, though modern scholarship suggests this number is exaggerated. Archaeological excavations in eastern France have uncovered fortifications and evidence of mass movement of populations, lending partial support to Caesar's narrative. The Helvetiae were forced to return to their homeland, establishing Caesar's authority early in his command. Later in 58 BCE, Caesar confronted the Germanic king Ariovistus, who had crossed the Rhine with his Suebi warriors. Caesar's account emphasizes the threat posed by Germanic migration into Gaul and his role as protector of Rome's Gallic allies. The battle near the Upper Rhine resulted in a Roman victory, with Ariovistus retreating across the river. Archaeological studies of the Alsace region, including the site at Horbergweir, show evidence of Germanic presence in this period, corroborating elements of the historical record. In 57 BCE, Caesar launched campaigns against the Belgic tribes of northern Gaul, described in Bellum Gallicum Book 2. He claimed that the Belgae were the bravest of the Gauls because they were furthest from Roman influence. The major engagement at the river Sabais, possibly the Samba, nearly ended in Roman disaster, but the discipline of Caesar's legion secured victory. Excavations in the region, particularly near modern Aisne, reveal defensive ditches and fortifications consistent with Belgic tribal settlements of the mid-1st century BCE. By 56 BCE, Caesar expanded operations to western Gaul, confronting the Veneti, a seafaring people of Armorica, modern Brittany. The Veneti controlled trade along the Atlantic coast and resisted Roman authority. Caesar constructed a fleet, adapting Roman naval tactics to Atlantic conditions. In the naval battle described in Bellum Gallicum 3:14, the Romans used hooked poles to tear down the rigging of Venetic ships, neutralizing their superior seamanship. Archaeological finds of Celtic anchor stones and ship remains along the Breton coast provide material context for this confrontation. The Veneti leaders were executed, and their population was enslaved, marking one of Caesar's harshest reprisals. The years 55 and 54 BCE were notable for Caesar's expeditions beyond Gaul. In 55 BCE, he bridged the Rhine, a symbolic act demonstrating Roman power to Germanic tribes. The construction of the timber bridge, as Caesar describes in Bellum Gallicum 4:17, was completed in just 10 days, a feat of engineering confirmed as plausible by modern experimental archaeology. Caesar then crossed into Germania but withdrew after limited operations, having made his point. Later that same year, he launched the first Roman expedition to Britain. The fleet encountered difficulties due to weather, and the campaign was inconclusive. Nevertheless, Caesar's account highlights the novelty of contact with Britain. Archaeological evidence, including imported Roman wine amphorae found in Kent, suggests limited pre-conquest trade between Gaul and Britain, consistent with Caesar's reports. In 54 BCE, Caesar returned to Britain with a larger force. This time he advanced further inland, encountering resistance from tribes led by Cassivellaunus. The campaign again achieved limited direct results, but Caesar extracted tribute and hostages before withdrawing. Archaeological surveys in southeast England, such as at Wheathampstead and St Albans, Valamian, reveal fortified oppida that may correspond to sites mentioned in Caesar's narrative. The expeditions, though militarily inconclusive, enhanced Caesar's prestige in Rome as the first Roman commander to reach Britain. The later years of the Gallic Wars were dominated by resistance movements. In 53 BCE, after a winter of unrest, Caesar launched punitive campaigns against the Eburones and other tribes, devastating large areas. His accounts stress both Roman discipline and the ferocity of Gallic resistance. The climax came in 52 BCE with the Great Uprising led by Vercingetorix, chieftain of the Arverni. The revolt united much of Gaul against Rome and culminated in the famous siege of Alesia. At Alesia, Caesar faced a Gallic force of perhaps 80,000 within the fortress and a reported 250,000 relief troops. Caesar constructed a double line of fortifications, an inner circumvallation to contain the besieged and an outer contravallation to repel the relieving army. The engineering works, described in Bellum Gallicum 7. 72 to 88, extended over 20 kilometers. Archaeological excavations at Elyse Saint-Reiner in Burgundy, identified as Elysia, have uncovered Roman siege works, including ditches, ramparts, and weaponry, confirming key details of Caesar's account. The Roman victory at Elysia crushed organized Gallic resistance. Vercingetorix was captured and later executed in Rome after Caesar's triumph. By 50 BCE, Gaul was effectively under Roman control. Caesar claimed in his commentaries that he had subdued over 300 tribes, conquered 800 towns, and secured the allegiance of millions. While exaggerated, the scale of conquest is undeniable. The incorporation of Gaul into Rome's sphere had profound consequences: the extension of Roman citizenship, the spread of Latin, and the eventual transformation of Gaul into a Romanized province. Archaeological evidence, including Roman military camps, roads, and imported goods, documents this rapid integration. Politically, the Gallic Wars transformed Caesar's position. He had secured immense wealth through plunder and tribute, won unmatched military prestige, and commanded the personal loyalty of hardened legions. His published Commentarii de Bello Gallico, written in a clear, direct Latin style, served as political propaganda, shaping Roman opinion in his favor. Cicero himself remarked on their clarity and elegance, noting that they were written unadorned, like naked bodies, stripped of rhetorical decoration. Yet Caesar's success in Gaul also alarmed the Senate and his rivals in Rome. Pompey, once his ally, began to distance himself, aligning with the Optimates. The death of Crassus in 53 BCE at Carrhae against the Parthians removed the third pillar of the triumvirate. By 50 BCE, Caesar stood as the most powerful individual in Rome, yet also as the most feared. The stage was set for civil war. By the end of 50 BCE, tensions between Caesar and the Senate had reached a breaking point. Caesar's proconsular command in Gaul was due to expire, and the Senate, under the influence of Pompey and the Optimates, demanded that he disband his legions before standing for a second consulship. Caesar, however, feared prosecution and political ruin if he returned to Rome without the immunity of office. His immense popularity with the masses, his wealth from Gallic campaigns, and the loyalty of his veteran soldiers made compromise unlikely. The key legal flashpoint came with the Senate's decree in January 49 BCE ordering Caesar to relinquish his command. In response, Caesar famously crossed the Rubicon River with the 13th Legion, a symbolic act of insurrection. Suetonius, Divus Julius, 32, preserves his reputed words, Alia iacta ist, the die is cast. Archaeological surveys of northern Italy have identified routes used by Roman armies during this period, though the exact location of the Rubicon remains uncertain. The civil war quickly spread across Italy. Pompey and the Senate abandoned Rome, retreating south to Brundisium and eventually to Greece. Caesar advanced rapidly, encountering minimal resistance. Inscriptions and coinage minted during this period emphasize Caesar's role as dictator re publici constituendi, dictator to restore the Republic, reflecting his political narrative that he sought to rescue Rome from senatorial corruption. In Spain, Caesar moved against Pompeian forces commanded by Lucius Afranius and Marcus Petreius. The campaign culminated in the Battle of Ilerda, 49 BCE, where Caesar, despite logistical challenges, secured the surrender of Pompey's legions. Archaeological evidence from Leda in Catalonia includes remains of Roman camps consistent with this campaign. Caesar's decision to pardon the defeated soldiers reinforced his policy of clementia, mercy, a recurring theme in his propaganda. Meanwhile, in Rome, Caesar consolidated power. He was appointed dictator for 11 days in 49 BCE to oversee elections, then consul alongside Publius Servilius Vartia. He used these offices to secure legitimacy while continuing the war effort. His careful balance of legal authority and military force distinguished his approach from earlier Roman usurpers. In 48 BCE, Caesar turned east to confront Pompey directly. Pompey's forces, supported by the resources of the eastern provinces and the navy, outnumbered Caesar's. The decisive confrontation came at the Battle of Pharsalus in central Greece. Caesar commanded approximately 22,000 legionaries against Pompey's 45,000. Despite numerical inferiority, Caesar employed flexible tactics, including the use of a concealed fourth line to counter Pompey's superior cavalry. The result was a crushing victory for Caesar. Plutarch, Caesar, 46, and Appian, Civil Wars, 2. 82, provide detailed accounts. Archaeological surveys in Thessaly have identified possible sites of the battle, though definitive evidence remains elusive. Pompey fled to Egypt, seeking refuge with the Ptolemaic court. However, he was assassinated upon arrival by agents of Ptolemy XIII, who hoped to curry favor with Caesar. When Caesar landed in Alexandria, he was presented with Pompey's severed head. Ancient sources describe his reaction as one of grief rather than triumph, consistent with his cultivated image of clemency. Caesar was soon drawn into the Alexandrian War. Cleopatra VII, engaged in a dynastic struggle with her brother Ptolemy XIII, sought Caesar's support. Ancient accounts, particularly Plutarch, Life of Caesar, 49, emphasize Cleopatra's personal charisma and political acumen. Caesar backed Cleopatra, and after months of siege warfare in Alexandria, 48 to 47 BCE, he secured victory. Archaeological evidence in Alexandria, including remains of fortifications and Ptolemaic palaces now submerged, corresponds with descriptions of the conflict. Cleopatra was restored to the throne, and Caesar began a liaison with her that would later produce a son, Caesarion. In 47 BCE, Caesar pursued Pompeian remnants to Asia Minor. At the Battle of Zala, he defeated Pharnaces II of Pontus, son of Mithridates the Great. Caesar's swift victory led to his famous dispatch to the Senate, Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered, as recorded by Suetonius, Divus Julius, 37. In 46 BCE, Caesar turned to North Africa, where Pompeian loyalists allied with King Juba I of Numidia. The decisive battle occurred at Thapsus, where Caesar's veteran legions overwhelmed the opposition. The aftermath included mass executions of enemy leaders, though Caesar again spared many ordinary soldiers. Archaeological remains near modern Ras Demus in Tunisia reveal Roman camps and fortifications associated with the campaign. Returning to Rome, Caesar celebrated a quadruple triumph in 46 BCE, commemorating his victories in Gaul, Egypt, Pontus, and Africa. The celebrations included lavish processions, displays of captives such as Vercingetorix, and unprecedented public feasting. Coins minted in 46 BCE depict symbols of these triumphs, illustrating Caesar's projection of power. The civil war concluded in 45 BCE with the Battle of Munda in Hispania, where Caesar defeated the last Pompeian forces led by Gnaeus and Sextus, sons of Pompey. Caesar commanded about 40,000 troops against 70,000 Pompeians. Despite being outnumbered, his tactical superiority secured victory. Archaeological work in southern Spain has identified potential sites near Osuna consistent with the battle narrative. With victory at Munda, Caesar stood as the unrivaled master of the Roman world. He returned to Rome in 45 BCE, hailed as Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life. His authority now exceeded that of any Roman leader since the foundation of the Republic. Yet his unprecedented power also provoked opposition among those who saw in him the death of republican liberty. After the victory at Munda in 45 BCE, Julius Caesar returned to Rome as the undisputed ruler of the Roman world. He was appointed Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life, a title confirmed by inscriptions and coinage of the period. This unprecedented concentration of power represented a dramatic break from republican tradition, where dictatorships were typically temporary, lasting only 6 months during emergencies. Coins minted in 44 BCE bear the legend Dic Perpetuo, providing numismatic evidence of his extraordinary authority. Caesar immediately set about consolidating his position through a series of reforms that touched nearly every aspect of Roman political, social, and cultural life. His measures reflected both practical necessity after years of civil war and his broader vision for restructuring the Roman state. Ancient sources such as Suetonius, Divus Julius, 40–44, Appian, Civil Wars, 2. 106–111, and Cassius Dio, Book 43, provide detailed accounts of these reforms, which modern archaeology and epigraphy help contextualize. Political and administrative reforms. Caesar expanded the Senate from about 600 to 900 members, incorporating many new senators from Italian municipalities and provincial elites. Inscriptions from Gaul and Hispania record the elevation of local notables to senatorial rank, demonstrating the growing integration of provincial elites into Roman governance. Critics, particularly among the traditional aristocracy, viewed this as a dilution of senatorial dignity, but it strengthened Caesar's personal support base. He also restructured local government in Italy, granting self-governing rights, municipium status, to numerous communities. The epigraphic record, such as the Lex Ursinensis from southern Spain, illustrates how Caesar's municipal laws formalized local administration, creating legal frameworks that endured for centuries. Calendar reform. Perhaps Caesar's most enduring reform was the introduction of the Julian calendar in 46 BCE, implemented with the help of the Alexandrian astronomer Sosigenes. The previous Roman lunar calendar had become misaligned with the solar year, requiring frequent corrections. Caesar's reform established a solar year of 365 days with a leap day every 4 years. The reform required the extraordinary year of confusion in 46 BCE, when the calendar was extended to 445 days to realign the system. Surviving inscriptions, such as Roman fasti calendrical lists, document the transition. The Julian calendar remained in use in Europe, with only minor modifications, until the Gregorian reform of 1582 CE. Economic and social measures. Caesar implemented debt relief measures, though more moderate than radical populace had advocated. He ordered that debts be repaid according to the original value of property before the civil wars, easing the burden on debtors without wholesale cancellation. He also initiated extensive colonization programs, settling veterans and urban poor in colonies across the empire, from Carthage in North Africa to Corinth in Greece. Archaeological remains of these colonies, such as city layouts and inscriptions, testify to their foundation under Caesar's auspices. Land redistribution within Italy was carried out to reward veterans, though often at the expense of dispossessed landowners. These policies reinforced the loyalty of his troops, who had fought for nearly 2 decades under his command. Cultural and religious policy. As Pontifex Maximus, Caesar continued to oversee Roman religion, though his unprecedented honors blurred the line between religious reverence and political deification. In 46 BCE, a temple to Venus Genitrix was dedicated in the Forum of Caesar, Forum Iulium, emphasizing his mythical descent from the goddess. Archaeological excavations of the Forum Iulium confirm the scale and grandeur of this project, which became a lasting monument to his reign. The Senate voted numerous honors to Caesar, including a gilded chair in the Senate, statues among those of the kings, and even a temple dedicated to Clementia Caesaris. These measures, however, alarmed Republicans who viewed them as monarchical. The rostra in the Forum was decorated with trophies from his campaigns, further elevating his personal image above that of the state. Personal conduct and symbolism. Caesar's assumption of symbols traditionally associated with kingship contributed to rising hostility. He wore the laurel wreath constantly, partly to conceal his thinning hair, but also as a mark of triumph. More controversial was his occasional use of the purple robe, a color associated with monarchs. Ancient sources report incidents where he accepted excessive honors, such as the title Father of the Fatherland, Pater Patrii, and his image on coinage while still alive, a break from Roman norms. Numismatic evidence confirms his portrait on denarii minted in 44 BCE, the first living Roman to appear on coinage. The most infamous incident occurred during the Lupercalia festival of February 44 BCE. Mark Antony publicly offered Caesar a diadem, symbol of monarchy. Caesar refused, and the diadem was placed in the temple of Jupiter. While Suetonius and Plutarch differ on whether this was a staged display or a genuine test of public opinion, the event crystallized fears that Caesar aspired to kingship. Centralization of power. By early 44 BCE, Caesar controlled all major levers of power: military, political, religious, and economic. His planned campaigns included a massive invasion of Parthia, intended as revenge for Crassus's defeat at Carrhae in 53 BCE. Preparations for this campaign are recorded in both literary sources and archaeological traces, including supply depots along the eastern Mediterranean. Had Caesar lived to execute this campaign, Rome's eastern frontier might have been dramatically altered. Yet while Caesar's reforms addressed long-standing crises, his unprecedented accumulation of honors and centralization of authority provoked intense opposition. To many senators, Caesar represented the end of the Republic. Cicero, though often pragmatic in his support, lamented in his correspondence that the traditional liberties of Rome were vanishing. The conspiracy that would culminate in his assassination was already forming by the spring of 44 BCE. By early 44 BCE, Julius Caesar's dominance of Roman politics was unparalleled. He held the dictatorship in perpetuity, dictator perpetuo, controlled the Senate through expanded membership, commanded the loyalty of veteran legions, and enjoyed divine honors unprecedented for a Roman statesman. His projected campaign against Parthia promised further glory. Yet this very concentration of power generated intense opposition among senators who feared the extinction of the Republic. The conspirators. The conspiracy against Caesar was led by Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus. Cassius, a seasoned military commander, harbored resentment after being sidelined in favor of Caesar's loyalists. Brutus, though a beneficiary of Caesar's clemency after Pharsalus, was courted by conspirators due to his lineage. He claimed descent from Lucius Junius Brutus, the legendary founder of the Republic who expelled Rome's kings in 509 BCE. Ancient sources emphasize that invoking this ancestral memory gave symbolic legitimacy to the plot. Cicero, in Letters to Atticus, 14:4, records rumors of the conspiracy but did not participate directly. Altogether, between 60 and 80 senators were implicated. They referred to themselves as liberatores, liberators, framing their act as a defense of republican liberty. Plutarch, Caesar, 62, and Appian, Civil Wars, 2. 117, provide the fullest accounts of their planning. The Ides of March. The chosen day was the Ides of March, the 15th of March, 44 BCE, when the Senate was scheduled to meet in the theatre of Pompey, as the Curia was under reconstruction. Archaeological excavations at Lago di Torre Argentina in Rome have identified remains of the theatre of Pompey complex, confirming the location described by ancient sources. Suetonius, Divus Julius, 81, records numerous omens preceding the assassination, unusual sacrifices, prophetic dreams of Caesar's wife Calpurnia, and a warning from the soothsayer Spurina to beware the Ides of March. On the morning of the meeting, Calpurnia urged Caesar not to attend. Initially persuaded, Caesar hesitated until Decimus Brutus, one of the conspirators, convinced him to proceed. As Caesar entered the Senate, he was presented with a petition by Tillius Cimber. While he read it, Cimber seized Caesar's toga as a signal. Casca struck the first blow, wounding Caesar in the neck. Accounts differ on the number of wounds. Suetonius states 23, Plutarch agrees, while Nicholas of Damascus gives 35. Caesar reportedly attempted to resist but fell beneath the flurry of attacks. Ancient tradition preserves his words to Brutus, "You too, my child," though Suetonius doubts their authenticity. Aftermath in the Senate. When Caesar's body collapsed at the base of Pompey's statue, the symbolism was striking. The conqueror of Pompeii lay dead beneath his rival's image. Archaeological evidence indicates that the Curia within the theatre of Pompey was later walled off and consecrated, marking the spot as cursed. The conspirators emerged, proclaiming liberty restored. Yet their expectations of public support were misplaced. Instead of acclaim, the Roman populace was shocked and enraged. Cicero later remarked that the conspirators killed the king but left the monarchy alive, reflecting the paradox of their action. The funeral. Mark Antony, Caesar's colleague as consul, assumed control of the situation. At Caesar's public funeral, Antony delivered a eulogy preserved in part by Appian and dramatized by Shakespeare centuries later. He displayed Caesar's blood-stained toga and wounds to the crowd, inflaming popular anger. Archaeological analysis of the Forum Romanum reveals the likely location of the rostra from which Antony spoke. The funeral culminated in a spontaneous riot. The people seized Caesar's bier, cremating his body in the Forum itself rather than in the Campus Martius. Excavations in the Forum have uncovered remains of a later shrine, Haroun, marking the site of the cremation, confirming the accounts of ancient historians. The collapse of the conspirators' cause. The conspirators, instead of seizing control, fled the city. The Senate, intimidated by the populace, ratified Caesar's acts, Acta Caesaris, and confirmed his appointments. Antony sought to preserve order while consolidating power for himself, while Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, named in his will, prepared to enter Roman politics. Within weeks, it was evident that the assassination had failed to restore the Republic. Rather, it plunged Rome into renewed civil war. The legacy of Caesar's death was not the rebirth of liberty but the acceleration of Rome's transformation into an imperial monarchy. The assassination of Julius Caesar did not restore the Roman Republic, instead, it accelerated its collapse. The power vacuum left by his death was quickly filled by competing figures, most prominently Mark Antony, Marcus Lepidus, and Gaius Octavius, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and heir. Their struggles, and Octavian's eventual victory, reshaped Rome into an imperial state, a transformation rooted in Caesar's own career. Immediate aftermath. Caesar's will, read publicly by Antony, named Octavian as his principal heir and posthumously adopted him into the Julian gens. Octavian, only 18 years old, assumed the name Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. Inscriptions confirm his new status, and contemporary coinage soon bore his image alongside that of the deified Julius Caesar. This inheritance gave Octavian not only immense wealth but also Caesar's political brand. Antony initially tried to control events by positioning himself as Caesar's political successor. His oration at Caesar's funeral, Appian, Civil Wars, 2. 143, mobilized the Roman crowd against the conspirators, who fled Rome. Cicero, in his Philippics, denounced Antony as a tyrant in the making, but Antony's command of Caesar's veterans gave him considerable leverage. The Second Triumvirate. In 43 BCE, Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus formed the Second Triumvirate, legally established by the Lex Titiae. Unlike Caesar's informal alliance with Pompey and Crassus, this was a formal, extraordinary magistracy with near-dictatorial powers. Epigraphic evidence, including inscriptions from Cisalpine Gaul, records the authority of the triumvirs. One of their first acts was the proscriptions, lists of political enemies declared outlaws, their property confiscated, and their lives forfeit. Among the victims was Cicero, executed in 43 BCE. His severed hands and head were displayed on the rostra, a grim symbol of the brutality that replaced republican norms. Deification of Caesar. In 42 BCE, Caesar was formally deified by decree of the Senate as Divus Julius. This was the first time in Roman history that a Roman citizen had been elevated to the status of a god. Archaeological evidence includes the remains of the Temple of Divus Julius, dedicated in 29 BCE by Octavian, located in the Roman Forum. Coins minted by Octavian bear the comet symbol, the Sidus Iulium, observed in 44 BCE and interpreted as Caesar's soul ascending to the heavens. This celestial sign reinforced the divine legitimacy of Octavian as son of a god, Divi Filius. Civil War and the end of the Republic. The defeat of Caesar's assassins was swift. At the Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE, the forces of Brutus and Cassius were crushed by Antony and Octavian. Archaeological surveys in Macedonia, near the modern town of Philippi, have revealed remains consistent with large encampments and military activity of the period. With the death of the conspirators, the Republican cause effectively ended. The following years saw the gradual deterioration of the triumvirate. Lepidus was marginalized, Antony allied with Cleopatra VII of Egypt, and Octavian built his power base in Italy. Propaganda wars erupted, with Octavian portraying Antony as corrupted by the East. The conflict culminated in the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, where Octavian's fleet under Agrippa decisively defeated Antony and Cleopatra. Caesar's institutional legacy. Caesar's career provided the model for Octavian, who, as Augustus, founded the Principate in 27 BCE. Many of Caesar's reforms, the Julian calendar, municipal laws, colonization, and integration of provincial elites, became permanent features of the Roman state. Augustus preserved the outward forms of republican governance but concentrated power in his hands, much as Caesar had. The image of Caesar remained central. Statues, inscriptions, and coinage emphasized his divine status. The month Quintilis was renamed July Iulius in his honor. Writers like Virgil in the Aeneid linked Augustus and the Julian line to the destiny of Rome, embedding Caesar within Rome's foundational mythos. Long-term impact. The assassination of Caesar became a cautionary tale about the limits of political violence. Rather than preventing monarchy, it hastened it. His rise demonstrated the fragility of republican institutions under the strain of expansion, civil war, and inequality. Modern historians, supported by archaeological evidence of urban development, provincial integration, and economic change, view Caesar as both destroyer and creator. He dismantled the old republic but laid the framework for the Roman Empire. The cult of Divus Julius endured for centuries, with priests, Flamines Iuliales, serving in his honor. His temple in the Forum remained a site of imperial ceremony. Even emperors who sought to distance themselves from overt monarchy styled themselves as heirs of Caesar. Conclusion. Julius Caesar's legacy is paradoxical. He was a general of extraordinary talent, a reformer with vision, and a politician who pushed Roman traditions beyond their breaking point. His assassination, intended to save the Republic, instead marked its effective end. The Republic gave way to imperial rule, and Caesar's name, Caesar, became a title of emperors from Augustus to the Byzantine Kaiser and the German Kaiser. Through literary sources, inscriptions, coins, and monumental archaeology, Caesar's life and death remain among the most thoroughly documented in antiquity. His influence on Rome, and on political history more broadly, is immeasurable.